Looky here, Facebook. Look who we have. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Tony Tripoli.
Hey,
Huh?
everybody.
Man, you've seen him all over E with Joan Rivers, Fashion Police, and the E50 famous, fabulous moments of TV. What was that? It was a long time.
Something that was like 50s most outrageous reality moments, or one of those countdown clip shows.
Yeah.
Basically, my whole career consists of things that you probably saw in a nail salon with the sound off.
That's a great line. Great. Man, people wish the sound was off when my first 5 years on stage. So tell me, you're in Phoenix. So how are things with this whole pandemic and shutdown in Phoenix?
Well, Arizona is not a participating state. We don't participate in daylight saving time. We're like, fuck it, we're not changing our clocks for anybody. And so it's thrilling to get up at 3:30 or 4 in the morning, and the sun's already up because we refuse to change our clocks. But anyhow, so we also were very late to adopt any of these reasonable, closures of our businesses. So God knows you can still get a gun anytime you want, but you can't sit in a restaurant. You can't get the Starbucks here are only open from 6 in the morning till 2 in the afternoon.
Gee.
So it's weird. And yeah, I am blessed to have a wonderful boyfriend in my life. I'm also, I shouldn't start calling him my victim because I'm gonna murder that motherfucker. I can tell you that. It's cool. I don't know if it would be a COVID-related disease, but this lockdown is going to result in some deaths. That I can assure you. If you see me posting on Facebook, look at my wonderful new tomatoes in my garden. Just know there's a dead body. Oh, now you're moving again.
Now it says I'm unstable. What do you think?
Well, I think that's how we found each other.
I watched your video clips with you on stage. You're hysterically funny.
Thank you. I'm hysterectomly funny. Yeah, no, thanks. Listen, I miss it. I mean, I haven't done stand-up now in over a month. How long has it been since you were in a room with actual humans in the room?
They shut down Vegas March 18th, and I did a show at the Stratosphere on like the 14th, and then the pandemic, it was like, I'm part Jewish, I thought it was my fault.
That's the very Jewish response is, oh my God. I mean, the Goyim can bomb, but when they bomb, they don't shut down the city. It's funny because the LA Comedy Club there at the Stratosphere is just one of the best clubs. I love playing at that club. I love Butch Bradley. I love Ty Rivera.
Yes.
All the whole staff there. So,
Me
and obviously the iconic Marsha Warfield.
Yes, oh my gosh, getting to meet her. What an icon. What an icon. Yeah.
So it's the exact perfect size. It's dark, and they take it so seriously. They don't let people in the audience talk.
Yes.
They're really there. Everyone's there because they love comedy and they want to hear. I love that room.
Yes, Jimmy Earl put me on a show, and I couldn't say anything wrong. At the set, it was like, and when I got done, he told me that I killed, and I'm like, I gotta admit, that's my biggest.
They closed.
Yeah.
They had to close the city. You were so good.
Yeah, we're not gonna let a Jew kill. It's my fault, but I'll blame it on the phone.
That's fine. Listen.
You never want to have an old person near any kind of device.
Oh, you call yourself an old person?
Yes, it's true. I'm 69.
Okay, listen, congratulations. You know what? As a woman in entertainment, there's a lot of people that didn't want you to make it to 69. So good for you for just telling them they're fucking wrong.
Yeah, I'm not afraid to. I'm having a blast at 69. I never had better looking hair, teeth, and body, and I'm just like messing with it. I'm not going to let anybody ignore me. Oh, no, you don't. So.
Well, listen, I mean, at that age, the hair and teeth are removable, which makes it so much easier to maintain. I just turned 50 last December.
Wow.
And keep in mind, I'm a gay man, so that's a misdemeanor. It's so terrible in so many ways, but just so freeing, because you just kind of go, okay, I'm not competing with 22-year-olds anymore. And so as soon as you admit that, I think for yourself, everything just gets better. It's like taking a heavy backpack off and going, I don't have to walk around with that weight of trying to compete with 20-year-olds anymore.
Yes.
I'm just going to compete in my age range. And let's be honest, the people in our age range, they're disasters.
I know.
So we're looking pretty fucking hot.
Yes. I tell people that my AARP bag is old enough to vote.
Jesus. And I hope that it does. Please, this November, please vote. Register your art bag.
How's it feel to have a litany of successes to your name? I mean, holy.
Listen, I love you saying that. People sometimes are like, oh, it's nice when people consider a person successful.
Yes.
I also, have a day job and left Los Angeles to move to Phoenix, Arizona, where it's affordable. So
yes.
let's have some perspective. I'm not selling out Madison Square Garden. My shows, my audiences are like a nice medium-sized AA meeting. That's my kind of, they're good AA meetings. You always have a full bar. That's the sort of size room that I'm the master of. But no, listen, I love it. I got to be the executive producer and head writer of the television show Fashion Police.
Yes.
With Joan Rivers. I had 5 years with Joan. Oh, by the way, have you ever met Joan Rivers?
Never.
Hold on.
Yay.
So here she is.
Oh.
Joan's ashes are actually in here.
Oh.
100%. I'm not making a joke. This is really true. I actually have Joan's ashes.
You're gonna make me cry.
So, nice to meet you, Mazel Tov.
Is that one of those Russian dolls?
I beg your pardon?
Is that one of those sick jokes she pulled, where the Russian dolls keep coming out?
Yeah, well, that was sort of that. She did it, but with noses. So that was but yeah, when we're working together one day, and I had been with her, 2-3 years at that point, and she was doing a joke, and she was, "No, wait, you want ashes when I die, right?" And I was like, "How did we? What?" And she was like, "I just figured you want ashes." And I go, "Yeah, okay, I do. I don't want to talk about this." And she was like, "No, she loved to talk about when she was ultimately going to pass." She was 81. She knew it was a possibility. And so, so there are 9 of us that have a piece of Joan.
Wow.
I have the pieces that she ended with. I don't have the factory originals.
So all those jokes that she had in the file cabinets, that was so inspiring to me as a beginner comic. I haven't been in comedy that long, and when I saw that huge organized file, that set a precedent for me to, keep my stuff organized and laid out like that. That was amazing to see.
Yeah, it's true. She really, she had a work ethic that I've never seen before or since. She worked harder than anyone I've ever worked with in showbiz or out of showbiz. She was very aware. She told me so many times, you can only be as big an asshole as your numbers are.
Wow.
She had a real sense of, when the show's a hit and you're number one on the network, then you can ask them to repaint your dressing room. But when the show's ratings are slipping, you ask if you can come in on the weekend and paint it yourself.
Wow.
And then when the numbers go down a little more than that, you ask if there's anyone that they want to share your dressing room with you. That's just,
wow.
to be aware of that. But no, she was so wonderful. And yeah, the joke file, she, it's so funny. It was sort of like the opposite of her face. you know what I mean? Like, she was never going to throw a joke away. Eyelid, those are replaceable. But yeah, she has that incredible file. And the first time that I went to the New York apartment, which is where the file was kept, I said to her, listen, you know what I'm going to ask. I want to go, can I go play through the file? And she said, yeah, take a snack. You'll be there a while. And I went through the file, and, it's sort of like on a first date, the first time you get to be naked with someone. It was much smaller than I expected. But I went through, and I just found the joke that was the first joke when I was 15 years old that made me think Joan Rivers was the funniest person in the world. And it was under F for fat, but it was originally an Elizabeth Taylor joke. And the joke was, Liz Taylor's so fat, she puts mayonnaise on aspirin. To this day, I just think that is so funny that anyone would even think of that. I just think it's it's so short and simple and clean and pure, and it's kind of stupid, but also really kind of smart.
Yes.
And it's like a perfect joke, right? And so I pulled that card out of a little file, and I held that card in my hands. And it was just such a big moment in my life that I got to do that. But I hope that someday, the joke file goes to the Smithsonian. I think it should be there. I think it's a part of American literary history. There are jokes about, P for presidents, and you would go back, and there was a joke that was a Nixon joke, and it was typed. It was, Nixon is so stupid, he blank, blank, blank. And then Nixon had been crossed out, and it said Ford, and Ford had been crossed out, and it said Bush, Bush had been, and it said Clinton, all these different, ink pens. And it was just such a great example of a good joke is a good joke.
Wow.
And never throw it away. Keep track of everything.
That's a phenomenal story. You're a gay man, and you're a gay rights activist with the LGBTQ community. And you've worked with two huge comics who also are very pro the gay movement, and that's Kathy Griffin and Joan Rivers. Talk to me.
One of them is a decent human being, but sadly she's dead.
Yes, got it.
Kathy is just one of the most horrible, toxic human beings on the planet. She's a brilliant comedian, and she has done a lot of great work for the LGBTQ community. It's a very loyal fan base for her.
Yes.
A big money maker for her. But she has also shown up and done a lot of, events for gay groups that needed her star power. So as much as, we were friends for a very long time. I was on the first season of her reality show. And then we went our separate ways. I will still, with my personal feelings about her, I'm still the first to say she's an amazing comedian. She's probably the best talk show guest that we have around. That there's just no one you can book on a talk show that's going to deliver better.
Wow.
And her mother Maggie was one of the most special people I ever met, and she just passed this past month. And that is a real tragedy. Maggie was just a really, truly singular and spectacular woman, and I'm grateful that I ever, got to have some time with her.
That's
amazing.
amazing.
So I worked with two really big ones, and Margaret Cho I worked with a number of times, who I love, and I've worked with a lot of straight men who have really shown up in ways for the LGBTQ community too. And I think that one of the great things that comedy can do is allow audiences to see that we're a lot more similar than we are different. I mean, as a comic, we go on stage and, you probably talk a lot about how as a Jewish woman, you're so different than the boys in the audience, when really they're all going, oh my God, that's me too. Like, with the joke is we're acting like we're so other, when what we're really doing is showing you we're really very much the same. And, after my shows, as a not famous gay guy of a certain age, it is straight men over the age of 50, frequently wearing Trump t-shirts, that always say, you know, I love Trump, but I love you too. Can we get a picture? And I'm always like, I don't know that you can love Trump and love me too, but I guess in a way that's a kind of progress.
Yes.
And hopefully by me talking about my experience and just showing up, they'll, you know, if one of those people has my face flash in their mind before they head to the voting booth in November and maybe rethinks, you know, what they're about to do and how that's going to affect me and people like me and people that are black or brown or not originally from this country, then, oh my gosh, that means more to me than any room full of laughs.
Yes, that's amazing. I love that you have a passion behind your comedy. You know, I do comedy for the veterans around the country by myself. I go and knock on doors. I've been thrown out of VA hospitals doing comedy because they don't get that comedy is where you tell stories about your life. They want you to tell the stories about like the old school jokes, you know, like, I don't know, from the Poconos. I tell about they thought it was like me being selfish, but they don't get that's where comedy is now.
That's a really good point. And again, that goes sort of back to Kathy Griffin. Kathy Griffin, Margaret Cho, Janine Garofalo, David Cross, there's this whole group of people that were running around Los Angeles in the, I guess, early 90s. And that's really sort of created this kind of underground, what we now call alternative comedy, which really is storytelling comedy. I mean, Joan's set list of an hour was 2,000 individual jokes that could go in any order, right? Whereas a Kathy Griffin set list is just 3. It's going to say Real Housewives, Oprah story, and then Backstage at the Grammys. And those 3 stories are going to take an hour for her to tell. And that is the kind of comedy that you and I do, where we go and we tell a long story. And of course, there is an art and a skill, and you're telling a story in a certain way to lead the audience to certain points along the way, and hopefully manipulate them into feeling or thinking a certain way, and then getting the big release laugh. But on its face, I can see how people at the VA hospital would be like, it's inappropriate of you to come in and brag or talk about your own life when these people are sitting here having been through what they've been through. But of course, you're right and they're wrong. If you can go in and give a room full of strangers, I mean, listen, Joan used to say, every time you make people laugh, you're giving them a little vacation.
Yes.
And so who deserves a little vacation more than these true heroes that have given so much for their country? And if you can make them forget for just a couple of moments, that is not a small thing.
Thank you. I say that when I'm making the veterans forget what they did so we can sling jokes in English, it makes me tingly all over, like all over. And so I just want to keep on finding GI spots.
I think that's great. Listen, it's so great. Listen, we have a lot of wonderful things in this country. Obviously, we live in the greatest country on the planet, but we also have a lot of blind spots and a lot of communities that we have really not served the way we should have. The Black and brown communities in this country, our Native American communities, our veterans, our people who have any mental challenges. We tend to just pretend they don't exist or lock them away in a facility. And the way we treat prisoners in this country, being one of the only industrialized countries that has for-profit prisoners, where it's actually incentivizing companies to incarcerate people, mostly men of color. I think we're going to have to really examine some things. And I want to believe that as terrible as this pandemic is, that maybe in some small ways it'll be a bit of a reboot or a reset button. And we will go, because we look at how we treat seniors in this country and we just put them in nursing homes and go on about with our lives. Whereas in most of the globe, your elderly people get moved back into the home.
Yep.
And they help raise the children, the young children in the home, so that there's that generational sort of circle of life. And we don't really do that very much in this country. And now when you look at what COVID is doing in all of these nursing homes across the country, I'm hopeful that maybe over the next few years, families will be a little less quick to put their loved elderly people in those facilities and maybe find a way to keep them in the home. And I think that's definitely a huge step in the right direction.
Yes. So the whole shutdown, I'm sure it affected your pocketbook, but it's got to have made the good people become gooder. I mean, I think you've dug down deeper. People, sociopaths and narcissists aren't going to come out of this any better unless they get help. But, you know, us who really feel are going to come out of this like, how can we get better because of it? So how is it making you a better human, boyfriend, worker, person in the world? How are you making the world better because of this?
Wow. That's the big takeaway here is let's find a silver lining, and hopefully it's making a lot of us better. If I'm really honest, I don't think I've found it yet. I wish I had a funny, pithy answer for you, but I'm struggling with it. That's the depression that I'm fighting right now in this lockdown, is what's the point of this if I don't come out of it somehow better, a better person? I don't know. I hope that it increases my capacity for empathy and kindness. But shit, I don't know.
Yeah.
But you're right. I want to think that comics are going to be better. I want to think that the rotten, misogynistic, homophobic, hacky comics that we've all had to endure, hopefully some of those will move on and find a new hobby. But I don't think I think they're going to be the first ones to sign up for open mics the night they open it. And I think that we're headed into, a lot of comics have said comedy's going to be so great when things reopen, like let's just say September 1st. Oh, on September 1st there's going to be great jokes. And I'm like, no, comedy is going to be, if comedy clubs open September 1st, comedy is going to be a shit show until November. But hopefully by Christmas, we'll have some comics that develop some material about COVID that isn't just toilet paper, I got fat, I was mad at my wife, I hate my kids, I don't know how to homeschool. Like, that's all, those jokes are already exhausted and we're still in lockup. So what's the original funny take on this?
Yes.
I don't know.
What is your personal process for writing a joke? Like if you do, like most of the time your best jokes come when you're tired or stoned or drunk, or you start with a premise, or you start with a punchline, or you just write until something pops off the page.
There are two ways for me to come up with a useful joke. I can give myself an assignment because that's how Fashion Police was. We would build the show and there would be like 22 outfits and celebrities in the show. And, you had to come up with 8 to 10 jokes on each one. Whether you felt any emotion or energy about it at all, you had to turn in 8 to 10 jokes, right? So giving yourself an assignment every day or every 2 days, like I am going to write jokes about what a terrible cook I am today, or I'm going to write jokes about whatever. You're not going to get a very high percentage that way. But you'll get that one really good joke, and as you know, as a working comic, when you have one good joke and you start doing it in front of audiences, you then find a tag for it, and then you find a callback for it later, and that one joke becomes a 2-minute chunk, becomes a 5-minute chunk, becomes your closer. So that's the reason why stage time is so important, because you take that little bit and it grows as it becomes more of a conversation with the audience, right? So that's version A, is giving yourself an assignment. But for me, what I do is I very often have a thought of a funny joke and I kind of sing it in my head, and I take my phone and I make a voice recording of me, and it's usually at night. Very often I'm sort of drifting off to sleep, so I have a phone filled with these voice recordings of me on Ambien, slurring, sounding like I'm half in the bag. And they're the worst jokes you've ever heard. And it's like these rambling blah, 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 blah. But when I listen to the back, I kind of remember, oh, this is the nugget, the funny thing. And then I re-record them that next day and sort of tighten that minute of rambling down to 20 seconds that has a joke in it. And then I'll start to do it on stage in front of people. So my process usually is a slurry, rambly, kind of incoherent, has no ending, minute or so, minute and a half. And then a few days later, I'll re-record it in my phone as a tighter version. And then you get in front of people and start stretching the taffy back out again and see how long you can stretch it and turn it in more than just one joke.
I love that process. What was it like to, you worked your way up in the writing business on shows, from being a writer to being a head writer to being an executive producer writer. So congrats on that. I mean, oh my God, on some great shows that a lot of people still remember those shows. Maybe not all the millennials, but they should look them up. And so what was that like being, really what was it like to have the position to be hired? What was the moment like when you got hired for all these gigs and got to be there? And
it's such a, of course, I try to stay grateful, and I think that I had an awareness while it was happening. Wow, this is really lucky and great, and I'm really, I lucked into something. This is a great opportunity. And then also, you're just kind of trying to keep your head above water so you don't have a lot of time to really overthink anything, because you're just, oh God, I can't embarrass myself, right? So for me, I started doing stand-up very late. I was 38 years old. And I was doing just shows for free at gay bars around LA and occasionally not gay bars. And I was very lucky that the executive producers of the TV show The Soup were fans of mine. You remember The Soup with Joel McHale?
Joel McHale.
They came to me after a show one night, and there were like 8 people in the audience, and 7 of them were drunk. And they were like, we think you're really funny. We're doing a female version of The Soup, and we want a gay guy in the writer's room to just kind of help mix it up with the girls. Would you like the job? And I immediately was like, oh, no, I couldn't do that. I don't have any kind of like technique, or, I don't really have a process. I'm not good with like due dates, and no. Not even realizing I was being offered this incredible opportunity, and I should just say, thank you, when do I show up? And they kept saying, no, please consider it. And I was like, oh no. And they called me again and said, we'd really like you to think about it. Would you please? Like, as if I'm doing them a favor. Oh, I'm so embarrassed. And so I did that, and it really was a great fit. I'm a good procrastinator. So if I don't have a deadline, I'm not good at accomplishing anything. So television is very deadline driven. And again, every morning, when you work on a television show, and you write, every day you have to write what we call monologue jokes. So even though our show's format didn't really have a monologue per se, you need topical jokes that say to the audience, this show was taped this week. And so it's very much like a Tonight Show monologue. And so every day we had to turn in a page of monologue jokes. And how it works on most television shows is the junior producers come in first thing in the morning, and they go on all the websites that cover news that fits the demographic of your television show. So for our show, because we were a very female-driven show, there was a lot of beauty and fitness and fashion, a lot of celebrity gossip. So all of those websites, they would find any interesting story and cut and paste all of those links onto a big document. And that was our premises. And so those were stories that the network felt would be appropriate for our audience, and they wanted jokes on those. So you would get all of these premises, and you would get maybe 30 of them a day, and you needed to write, 15 or 20 jokes. So you kind of got to pick and choose from that list things that you responded to or that you had an idea for. And so that's a great exercise that I tell a lot of newer comics to make themselves do, is every morning flag 5 or 10 websites and just make yourself write one joke on one of the stories on each of those 10 websites. But physically write it. because in the writing and the typing out of a joke, you'll move words around and you'll see, because you will get this, but a lot of people don't understand that a written joke is worded very differently than a joke that you speak to an audience, right?
Very.
Some things just look funnier in print. They don't sound. If you flip words, then they sound funnier. So it's great to be aware of that exercise because it makes you more valuable as a joke writer. And so I had written on that show for 3.5 years, and I got a call one day from the promotions department at E, and they said, we're bringing back Fashion Police with Joan Rivers, and she doesn't like any of the promos that we wrote, and she said to get 3 funny gay guys to Melissa's house tomorrow to write something better, so can you go? And keep in mind, Joan Rivers had been my favorite comedian since I was 15 years old. I had seen her perform probably a dozen times, but I had never met her.
Wow.
And so suddenly, I had 24 hours notice till I was going to meet, my sort of childhood hero.
Yes.
And I stayed up all night writing little promos, zippy, short little jokes, like Fashion Please, just because it zips doesn't mean it fits. And things like that. And I went in and I started pitching jokes to her, and she was laughing. And after about 10 minutes, the other guys hadn't really been pitching much. And she took off her reading glasses and she pointed at me with them, and she said, I need to talk to you in the kitchen. And as we were walking to the kitchen, I realized, the other guys hadn't been talking much because I wasn't giving them an opportunity to pitch a joke. I was being really obnoxious and pushy. And I thought my childhood hero was going to reprimand me. And we got in the kitchen and she said, you're my new head writer. We need to get rid of these 2 assholes, and you and I are going to write some commercials.
Oh, wow.
And the woman changed my entire life overnight, and now here she is.
Wow.
So
that's
she was
crazy.
really, really good to me.
Tell me something wonderful that she did when you were walking around doing things with shows that you were on with her.
Okay.
I want to know human
That's
stuff.
great. Okay. First of all, I don't think I ever came into the same room that she was in without her trying to hand me the folded up $10 bill. And I was like, God damn it, woman, you know how much you pay me. I don't need $10. Like, it was just that old Jewish Yenta thing of constantly trying to slip me a 10.
Oh, how cute.
But we were walking down, I'll never forget this. We were walking down the street of New York City, and we were standing on a corner, and she said, look at the young girl opposite, across the crosswalk. She goes, I can tell you her whole story. She just graduated college, and she's on her first trip into the city to go on job interviews. She's a nervous wreck. Come on, let's go talk to her. And she grabbed my hand, and we ran against traffic, just literally stopping taxi cabs. And these cab drivers are like, was that Joan Rivers? Like, we run over to her, and she goes, excuse me, I have to know, are you in the city doing job interviews? And then this young lady is going, oh my God, this is Joan Rivers, and there's no camera crew. Like, what is going on? And the girl said, yeah, I just graduated from whatever college. And yes, I'm going on a really big job interview, and I really hope I get this job. How do I look? She says to Joan. And Joan goes, you look amazing. You're going to get the job. You just need one thing. And she took her necklace off that she was wearing, and she reached over and put it on this kid's head. I mean, this girl was like 22 years old. And this girl's eyes are like bugging out of her head. And it's this crazy, gaudy Joan Rivers, And the girl kind of hugs it, and she goes, oh my gosh, thank you so much. That means so much to me. And Joan goes, oh, it's QVC, $9.99. And the girl walked away, and Joan said, she's going to get the job, but better than that, she has she has a story to tell at dinner parties for the rest of her life.
Yes.
And it was just this moment where I realized that Joan loved the power of being a celebrity and how you could just randomly meet a person and do a thing that was a very small thing for you, but that would really, they would talk about the rest of their life. And isn't that a fun thing? And I watched her give the necklace that she was wearing probably 100 times in the 5 years that I worked with her. And she always, when she would put on her necklace in the morning, she would put 3 more in her purse because she just knew I'll probably give it away. And it was just so, it's really, isn't it beautiful? It's like, it's just so sweet and thoughtful. And I mean, I literally have a dozen stories like that, but she was such a lady. You know, I think what I wish more people understood was that Joan on stage was an act. And when she was on stage, she was a demon. I mean, she was a panther. But off stage, she was an incredibly dignified and appropriate, well-behaved woman of society. Like, Betsy Bloomingdale and Barbara Walters are her besties.
Wow.
In New York. Like, this is not a woman who's running around saying curse words and shouting at people all the time. That is not how she behaved when she was with her ladies. And when she was hostessing a party, it was finger bowls and place cards, and you couldn't sit with the person you came with. Everyone had to meet someone new, and her Thanksgiving party and her Seder dinner were the two big events of the year. And I was lucky enough to attend both, numerous. And one Thanksgiving, she called me and she said, I have bad news. I've just done the seating chart, and you're really getting fucked. You have drips just on all sides of you, because I needed a talker. And these people are such fucking wet blankets. But they'll listen to your stories, so I'm sorry. And it was just, I was so honored that she thought that I was one of her funny friends that she could put next to her boring friends. You know, I felt like I had really made.
Wow. You know, the story touched me so much about her being able to read exactly what that girl was going through. And then I did not ever know that she was benevolent in that specific way, giving out necklaces. But that's what I do. I make jewelry and I give jewelry out to people. If I'm wearing a pair of earrings and they say they like them, they're walking away with their earrings, the earrings I had on. I didn't know that about her. Yeah, and they're probably going, God, I wish it was Joan Rivers.
No, listen, it's just such a thoughtful thing when someone notices something about you that, oh, that's so nice, I like your earrings, to be able to go, here.
Yes.
Then wear them and get joy and put more joy in the world, you know?
Yes.
Oh, I did a funny joke. Go tell it at work tomorrow, please.
Aww. So, what is the best thing you've seen Joan do on stage? Because you've seen a lot of that.
Yeah, she was taping a special in Montreal during the Just for Laughs Comedy Festival, which is the biggest comedy festival on the planet. Very, very prestigious. And she had a very long day because she had to, it was an hour-long that was not being recorded of Joan Rivers Presents a bunch of comedians. And then she was going to go last as the headliner, and that was going to be televised as a 1-hour special in Canada. So, as you know, anytime you're recording a comedy for television, once you've recorded it, then the material is considered burned, and you don't really perform those jokes anymore. And so it's a lot of writing, a whole new hour. And so we worked very hard on creating a lot of material, and she'd been doing it for, 6 months leading up to it. And the she had this joke that I wrote for her one day, and people used to always say to me, "Oh, didn't you write a bunch of jokes for Joan that you hated to give away, that you would have rather kept for yourself?" And I always just said, well, I don't really write a whole lot of jokes about my sagging tits, so it was kind of easy to give away. And so I wrote this joke that was, my vagina is so dry. Before the show, I sat in a bathtub and the water went. And so she liked the joke. She had done a joke on The Tonight Show when she went with Jimmy Fallon after being banned for 38 years. So it was a big night. She did Howard Stern the next day. Howard loved the joke and was like, oh my gosh, I almost died when you did that joke. I was laughing so hard. Well, Whitney Houston had then just passed. And, she obviously died in a bathtub. So the tag that then I wrote for the joke was, my vagina's so dry, I sent him a cup of water, and the water went, and the audience would groan, and she would say, seriously, Whitney Houston had only had a vagina as dry as mine, she'd still be alive today. Horrifying. And so she would get this big groan, laugh, and Joan loved it. And she was closing with this joke. And while we were doing the lighting check for the special, I was drinking a bottle of water, and I said, Joan, I have an idea for a joke. Not tonight, but when you're doing this joke in clubs, because she always had a bottle of water on stage, I said, what if you said, oh, I can make fun of Whitney because we were friends? Because, Joan was always saying she was best friends with all this money. In fact, I was there the night she died. Do you want to know the last the last words Whitney Houston had for me? And she would take the water and put some in her mouth and go, and like gargle on the water. Horribly poor taste. Okay? Admittedly, horribly poor taste. She laughed so hard, and she says, I'm going to do that tonight. And I was like, you're a crazy person. Like, no one has ever gone on stage in front of television cameras to record a special and closed their show with a brand new joke that they've never done in front of any audience. Like, that's just not. And I sat there that night, and that woman closed her show with that joke, having never performed it in front of an audience before. And I just thought, that's one of the greatest moments of comedy I will ever witness in my life.
Wow.
Because it says someone who knows exactly who they are, what their limits are, what their audience will and will not accept. I mean, she just knew everything that people like you and I are hoping to figure out half of someday.
Yes.
And she was just incredible. I can't say enough wonderful things about her.
And so you spoke earlier about how Joan had back-to-back jokes, quick, tight jokes. And there have been people that have clocked her and her laughs per minute, where she could go hour and a half getting 6 to 10 laughs a minute.
I mean, that's off the charts. That's insane.
It's crazy. Like, that's...
The only thing, when Joan passed, the only thing that I asked Melissa for was one of her cue cards because if you ever saw Joan live, the front of the stage was just covered all the way across with cue cards, and she had written them. If you saw in the documentary, she would get on her hands and knees and write them herself in her terrible handwriting and her horrible spelling, and at sound check, she herself would tape them down and then tape a clock to the center of the stage, and that was her. And so I remember when I would open for her, because I opened for her for 4 years on the road, and you would come out and do 25 minutes, clean, no curse words, no sex talk, no current events, no celebrity references. That's not an easy, right?
Wow.
The audiences were so excited to see Joan. It was like the best audience you could have because they were going to laugh at him.
Yes.
And I just remember I would stand there some nights when you had a really big laugh and you're just waiting for the laugh to end to do your next joke. And I would look at all of these cue cards with just the most filthy, god-awful stuff written on it. And I would just think, you people are laughing at this C-plus joke that I just did. If you only knew what was written on this stage, what you're about to hear for the next hour and a half. And so when she passed away, I said, Melissa, it would mean so much if I could have one of those cue cards that I used to stand on top of, And so all of Joan's joke cards in the file and all of her cue cards are together in one collection. The only cue card missing is the one that I have, and it's actually, you see this black door behind me?
Yes.
It's actually down that hallway in a big gold frame with its own light on it. And 2 of the joke file cards are gone. One went to Jimmy Fallon because he had her back on the Tonight Show after Johnny Carson had banned her for 38 years. And the other joke is the Whitney Houston dry vagina joke that Howard Stern loved so much that Melissa gave to Howard Stern. And at Joan's funeral, Howard Stern was the first person after the rabbi to get up and speak. And he opened by saying, Joan Rivers had a very dry vagina. In fact, her vagina was so dry, she once told me she sat in a bathtub and the water went. And the entire run of the 3 jokes, and I just remember like leaving my body in that moment and looking down and going, this is so surreal that I wrote this joke that I thought was funny. I presented it to Joan in Melissa's dining room. Joan laughed and thought it was hilarious. We practiced the joke. She did it on The Tonight Show. Jimmy Fallon almost had a heart attack. He was laughing so hard. The next day, she goes on Stern, one of my other favorite people in comedy. And he goes, oh my God, this Whitney Houston joke is so amazing. And does the joke to her. And then a year and a half later, when she's passed away, that was how they started her funeral. Like, I just felt like, as a person in comedy, I can stop now. Like, that's going to be the greatest achievement of my comedy career. And nobody even knows I wrote those jokes.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm kind of a spiritual person. I don't know if you picked up on that. But when my father passed that day, I felt my dad holding the same hand that we always went on walks with as a little girl growing up. So I just want to ask you, when Joan passed, have you ever felt her presence?
After Joan passed away, a week or so later, I got this tattoo. It says WWJD.
Yes.
But this J is not for Jesus. It's for the one that paid for this house. And I decided that the big takeaway from my 5 years with Joan was that I could, from then on, I could ask myself in any situation, what would Joan do?
Oh.
And I felt like I knew her well enough after 5 years that I could answer that question. And I just wanted some kind of sort of spiritual reminder. And so I have very often been at a decision-making crossroads, and I have looked down at the tattoo here on my wrist and known with much greater certainty what I should do.
Wow.
And for me, that is Joan and I having a conversation again. That is sort of me allowing her to be the Yenta, pushy Jewish grandmother that she always loved being.
Yes.
Because she used to joke, you guys, I hope that you don't believe in ghosts, because I'm going to be the most annoying ghost that you've ever had. Like, now, in real life, you can tell me to shut up or you can hang the phone up. But when I'm a ghost, I can walk through walls. Like, you're going to hear what I have to say. And I just thought, okay, well, this will be my kind of portal that I can summon her when I need her, but yet I can sort of fly on my own. Because I think the lesson of having people in your life that you love, the lesson of that loss is, okay, you must have gotten to a point where you don't need them anymore. You're able to be on your own without them now.
Yes.
And so as much as I miss my friend, and as much as everything that happens in the news, I just go, oh, I wish she was here to say the thing only she could get away with saying. It's nice knowing that she knew Melissa was going to be okay without her. They had such a challenged relationship for so many years, and they've been in such a good place for so long. She knew Melissa was going to be okay. Cooper was 14 when she passed. She knew Cooper was going to grow up to be an incredible man who was great to women, and she knew. And I think in some small way, she knew she had taught me everything she needed to teach me, and I could go. So, she's always going to sort of be my Yoda.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, is what she looked like without makeup.
What's the funniest line you ever delivered on Fashion Police?
I mean, we just had so much fun because, network television television is so hard because it's constant, it's unrelenting, it always has to be new and different and fresh, and yet they only want the same thing week after week after week. So your bosses are telling you, give us something new, and every time you pitch something new, they go, no, that's not what we do. Do this. So it's this really weird, you just live in this weird catch-22. And we did 48 episodes a year, which is unheard of. And so it was just really hard, but also just the most wonderful time. So I don't know. I don't have any one particular memory, although I will say what was so much fun was when we had funny people on, and Joan, because Joan really liked to be prepared. She was a writer, she was a rehearser, she was great at, ad-libs and improv, but she liked to have everything covered, and then I can play within that. But when we had a Sarah Silverman or a Kevin Hart, or even Miss Piggy on, she was like, okay, I don't want to play too much. This is someone who I trust, and I just want to go and kind of be messy and play with. And so we would all just let them go. And I mean, the thing is, so many comics don't like to laugh at anyone else being funny.
Yeah.
No one loved when you would just lay her out dead. That was her favorite thing. And so I remember we had Miss Piggy on the show once, and it was like a sports-themed episode. And so we were doing these football jokes, and Joan says to Miss Piggy, I'm sorry, is that disrespectful to talk about football to you, because that football was probably a cousin or something of yours. And Miss Piggy, the man doing the Miss Piggy, instantly went, oh, really, are you going to do a bunch of happy pigskin jokes, Joan? Because I didn't come prepared with a bunch of dinosaur jokes about you. And so we started laughing so hard, we almost had to stop taping. Like, she couldn't catch her breath. She was so just laid out by this foam puppet. And I just remember thinking in that moment, like, this is one of the happiest moments of my life, that I got to be in the room and watch that happen. So I had so many memories like that I don't know, but really my memories of Joan are not of her being hilarious. They're really much more of her just being so generous and kind. And my dog is 12 years old, and I have a little Yorkie. That's a shock, a gay man with a small dog. And he's just so spoiled, and I had only had him for about a year when I got him, and he was really close to dying. He was in an emergency animal hospital. They couldn't figure out what was wrong, and it ended up being about $11,000.
What?
Oh, that's how yeah.
What was wrong with him?
Well, it turns out it was valley fever, which we have in Nevada and Arizona, but they don't have the mold spores in California, so they don't even test for it. And so it's fungal meningitis. So his brain and spinal cord was swelling, and he was going to die, but they didn't know what the cause was. And it was only when they called me and said, they called me at 1 a.m. and said, you should come say goodbye. We don't think he's going to make it through the night. And the doctor said, we've tested for everything. If this was Arizona, we could test for valley fever. And I said, my family's in Arizona. This dog and I go to Arizona once a month. And she goes, oh, I didn't know that. We'll know in 10 minutes. And that's what it was. And then 24 hours later, he was on the right medicine and he was fine.
Great.
But after Joan passed away, so 3 years after all this had happened, I got a call from the animal hospital, and they said, we figure it's okay to tell you this now. When you were here all those years ago with your dog, we got a call from Joan Rivers, not the secretary, like literally Joan. And she said, my name is Joan Rivers, and Tony is like my child, and therefore that dog is my grandchild. So I don't care what it costs. You do whatever you need to do to keep that dog alive. And they had her American Express card in my file because she had told them if it got so expensive that I was saying I couldn't afford to pay for anything, to just make up a lie and start putting it on her card, but never to tell me. And she never told me, and they never told me. It was only after she died they called me. And so that is who Joan Rivers really was. And, you know, I wish more people knew stories like that.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That's so special. You are so fortunate. So now when you go out and you are on the road with the Bitches Back.
Yeah, I do a show with a Joan Rivers impersonator a couple of times a year. And his name is Joe Posa. And he really, Joan knew of him when Joe first reached out to me and said, "Hey, I do Joan, you know, in drag, and I know you open for Joan. Would you ever want to do a show with me where Joan opens for you?" And I thought, oh, that'd be fun. And I went to Joan and said, "Hey, I have this offer," because I wasn't going to do anything like that behind her back, right?
No.
And she was like, "Well, who's the queen?" And I said, Joe Posa. And she goes, "Oh, I love him. He's the best." And so this was Joan's favorite Joan Rivers impersonator.
What?
And I did the show a number of times with him while Joan was alive. And then after Joan passed, he was like, "I don't know if I feel right still doing her. I don't want anyone to think it's disrespectful." And then we really put together this show where I come out and talk about my years with Joan and say to the audience, this is Joan's favorite Joan, so it's okay that we're doing this tonight. And so, you know, we did the show we did it a lot those first couple of years after Joan has passed. And now we just get, Joe lives in Florida, I live in Arizona, so it's difficult for us to get to things in the same city, but I just love him. He's so good, and I encourage everyone to go to joeposa.com, and you can see clips of him doing Joan. And it's been fun because there are a couple of, you know, I never got to write any Trump jokes for the real Joan because he was not our president when she passed. So maybe she knew something we didn't. But so
she was on The Apprentice with him, and she won.
Yeah. Listen, she was alive when he came down the golden escalator and announced his candidacy, and she thought, "Oh, this might be a good idea." And I was like, "Woman, are you crazy?" But she really was intrigued. I believe that she would have. I think before the election happened, she would have realized he was not going to be a good idea. But yeah, so they were friendly. They had a friendly relationship, and so I did get to write a couple of Joan Rivers talking about Trump jokes that Joan Rivers gets to do. And every time we do a show together and I hear him do those jokes, I kind of feel like, all right, Joni, that's, you know, it would have been fun to pitch those jokes to you and hear you do them, but this is as good as it's going to get.
Yes, a good alternative. Please tell me that Melissa and Cooper are doing well.
They are. Melissa, you know, she's just a bright, and she's such a great mom. You know, the thing, like I said earlier, Joan and Melissa admittedly had a really, really challenging mother-daughter relationship, and it was very late in Joan's life that they were able to repair a lot of that damage. Joan had a lot of regrets about being so busy when Melissa was young and, you know, needed her mom more. And it's so impressive anytime someone is raised without, you know, I mean, Melissa grew up with a silver spoon in her mouth, but without feeling like she had access to her mom. So, you know, that's rough.
Yeah.
And she decided when she was a parent, she was not going to be that kind of parent, and she's not. Melissa is an amazing mom, and I really have so much respect and admiration for anyone that can break any kind of a negative cycle. Cooper is away at college now. He's on a full scholarship because he's such an incredible lacrosse player.
Wow.
And I mean, he's just a beautiful, handsome, kind, smart guy. And whatever woman he ends up with is, I mean, she has a man that was able to negotiate peace between Joan Rivers and Melissa Rivers.
Wow.
So he's kind of a dream man for whatever lady ends up with him someday.
Wow.
So they're doing great.
Good. Now, when you go walking around Phoenix, and there are older people in Phoenix, the older people all probably recognize you, but then maybe some of the millennials don't even have a clue who you are. Is that true to say, or what?
I'm not a person that gets recognized very often, but when I do, it is usually in connection with Joan, which is the best. I love that. That's such an honor.
Yes.
And I mean, as you certainly seen tonight, I will talk about Joan anytime to anyone that wants to hear about her. I'm sorry that you never got to have time with her. She would have adored you. I just wish if I could be a small representative, and I mean, you were saying how spiritual you are. I feel, we actually have her here with us tonight. So I hope that you feel when you walk away from this tonight, like you had a version of a meeting with her, because she really was just the greatest. And so I'm honored anytime anyone connects me with her.
I have a daughter about the same age as Melissa, and I was a single mom. And I spoiled my daughter. Spoiled her. Gave her everything. And then I got hit by a drunk driver. And my daughter had to take care of me. For 16 years, she chose to take care of me until it drove her mashugana. And she would take it out on me. So my daughter and I have a very strained relationship from that brain trauma that I had, where she was forced to be the only caregiver. So when I saw the struggle between Joan and Melissa, I didn't judge, because I had the very same thing for a different reason. But I really identified with that struggle.
I am so sorry to hear that.
Thank you.
And what is your daughter's name?
Lisa Smith, yeah.
Well, listen, I mean, I know that Lisa and you will, you're going to find whatever things need to be. It's, life is very long and there's a lot of chapters, and I'm sure this current chapter is very different than the 3 chapters before this. So
yeah,
who knows what it will be 3 chapters from now, right?
Yeah, and thank God for the pandemic, because now when I get up, the nightmare isn't about my daughter when she'll be back in my life. It's like, this is a real nightmare here with this pandemic.
Yeah, listen, it's good for perspective. That's true. I hope that that's something we all take away from this.
Yes.
We complain about a lot of things that suddenly don't matter quite as much anymore, do they?
Not at all. That's so true. So you're going to be doing twice a year, you're going around doing your show, The Bitch Is Back, with Joe Posa.
We do it a few times a year. We were supposed to do it last night in Palm Springs, but obviously everything is shut down. So I'm not sure when that'll be rescheduled, but we do the show. Yeah, we do it in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, and Palm Springs, and we've done it here in Phoenix. We do it in Fort Lauderdale, Chicago, all kinds of places. But I don't really have any dates to announce now, because everything is so on hold. But this was such a pleasure.
Such a pleasure. Thank you.
I'm sorry it wasn't probably the funniest hour of 2 comics talking, but I do think we talked about some really important stuff.
I loved every minute of it. Thank you. This is my favorite interview. I'm sorry. Everybody can just go suck a duck.
Well, listen, it's not because of me, it's because of Joan.
Yep.
We can do this again. We'll catch up again someday.
You brought Joan to life.
Well, next time I'm in Vegas, I'll definitely hope I can come see you.
I hope so. I'd love to hang out with you. See you later. Bye.
Well, it was a pleasure, and anybody watching, you can always go to TonyTripoli.com to find out what I'm up to, which right now is nothing. And there's all kinds of fun, filthy clips there that you can watch. And, find me on Facebook or whatever. And I hope to have some shows to announce sometime soon. Great.
I'll add that to the post. I'll talk to you later. I'll go post it, and will you share it on your page, Tony?
I sure will.
Thank you.
It was a lovely conversation. Good night.
I enjoyed it. And thank you so much, Tony Tripoli. Bye.